Without the pumps out front, you wouldn't have known it was a gas station. It sat alone on a forgotten 2-lane road outside a town called Briar Hollow, where the highway stopped pretending it mattered. The building looked more like an antique general store that had survived a century out of stubbornness. A log cabin-style front, a sagging porch roof, and 2 wooden rocking chairs that leaned at the wrong angles, like they were tired. A sun-faded vending machine sat beneath the awning, its glass fogged with grime and old sticker residue, beer logos, cigarette ads, and warning labels that curled like dead leaves. The windows were so dirty that the last sunset to shine through them might have been years ago. And still, there was a charm to it. A wrong kind of charm. The way a broken doll can look sweet from far away. I was walking in because I needed the job. My name is Evan. I was 26, running on caffeine and grief, and I'd moved back home a month earlier after my mother died and my father started failing fast. The doctors gave him a timeline they didn't say out loud, and he didn't ask. He just slept, woke up long enough to swallow a few pills, and then slept again. I didn't want to leave him alone, but we needed money. So I took a night shift at Marlow's Fuel and Goods from 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. 6 hours. Easy, the owner had told me. You'll just keep the lights on. As I crossed the gravel lot, my phone felt heavy in my pocket. I checked it anyway. No calls, no texts. That didn't relax me. It made me picture my dad lying in a silent house, the TV flickering on a low volume in an empty room, the kind of silence that can swallow a person whole. I pushed through the front door. Bells tied to the handle clattered like nervous laughter. The smell hit me immediately. Dust, cardboard, mothballs, and something else underneath. Something faintly sour, like an old basement that had been sealed too long. The store was cramped, narrow aisles stuffed with near-expired snacks, canned goods, cheap toiletries, and little souvenirs nobody bought. Drink coolers buzzed along the wall like a swarm of trapped insects. Behind the counter sat a display of mismatched beef jerky and scratch-off tickets that looked older than me. And then I saw them. Straight ahead, past the end caps, beyond the shelves, down the hallway that led to the bathrooms in the back office. 2 figures, a man and a woman, standing in the unlit corridor like cutouts. They were still, but somehow not, like they were breathing without moving. I froze, my hand halfway up in a greeting. Hello? The figures didn't answer. They didn't shift. They just stood there. And I was certain they were looking directly at me. Then a voice came from my left. Evan? That you? I jerked my head around. Behind the counter, half hidden by the jerky display, sat Wade Marlow, the owner. He was older now, thinning hair, thickening waist, and the kind of tired face you get from staying in the same place your whole life. Yeah, I said. Hey. Wade stood and walked around the counter, smiling like we were old friends. We'd gone to school together, technically, but we weren't close. In small towns, you collect familiar faces the way your shoes collect dirt. When I looked back down the hallway, the figures were still there. But now their eyes were lit, not reflective, not caught by a stray beam of light. Literature. A yellow-red glow, like coals stirred in a fire. My throat tightened. The 2 silhouettes seemed to lean toward each other, their shapes blurred and folded, melting together like wax, becoming one taller form. Too tall. The thing expanded upward, joints bending the wrong way, arms elongating as if it were unfolding itself. I stepped back, and the bells on the door gave a smaller, frightened jingle. The moment the sound happened, the hallway went empty. No figures, no glow, just darkness. Wade frowned. You all right? I forced a laugh, but it came out dry. Yeah, I thought I saw someone back there. Wade glanced toward the hallway like it was boring. Nope, just us. What about your wife? I asked, mostly because I needed my brain to latch onto something normal. Wade's smile twitched. She doesn't come here. Never liked the place. He said it too casually, like the subject wasn't worth oxygen. I nodded, pretending I didn't feel my heartbeat in my teeth. Wade gave me the tour. How to ring up fuel where the mop was. How to reset the freezer alarm when it started screaming for no reason. When we reached the hallway, he stopped beside a door at the far end. A stairwell door. The paint was chipped around the knob and the wood looked swollen from years of humidity. Wade's voice changed slightly, not louder, just firmer. Don't go up there, I blinked. Upstairs? It's an apartment, he said. Like that explained everything. Old storage, my parents' stuff. Locked anyway. Sure, I said. I'm not here to snoop. Wade stared at me for a moment too long. Then he nodded. Good. Don't go up there. Not even if you hear something. I tried to smile. Hear something like what? Wade's face didn't move with mine. Just don't. An hour later, he left in a hurry, like the building started rotting the second the sun went down. The bells rattled again as the door shut, and the sound echoed a little too long. I was alone. For a while, the night was exactly what he promised it would be. Slow. A trucker came in for coffee. A teenager bought gum and stared at the lottery tickets like they were a life raft. I stocked shelves and wiped counters and fought off the heaviness behind my eyes. Sometime after 11, I found myself sitting on the stool behind the register, chin dipping, blinking longer than blinking should last. That's when the thud hit. It came from above, and not a settling creak, not a pipe shifting, a heavy, deliberate impact. My eyes snapped open. I stared at the ceiling like it might show me the answer. Then another thud. After that, something that sounded like a startled cry. A woman's voice, thin, frightened, muffled by old floorboards. Help! I stood so fast, the stool clacked against the tile. All I could think about was my father, the way he cried out when he fell in the hallway, angry at his own weakness. The way he tried to laugh it off afterward because pride hurts worse than bruises. I moved down the back hallway, trying not to look into the dark gaps between shelves. The air felt colder there. The buzzing cooler sounded farther away, like I'd stepped into a different building. I reached the stairwell door. My hand closed around the knob, and that's when I felt it. The sensation of being watched. Not from behind me, from the office doorway across the hall. The office was open, unlit, a rectangle of blackness. I swallowed. I tried the knob anyway. It turned, the door opened. Wade had said it was locked. Inside was a steep set of wooden stairs leading upward into darkness. I flicked the light switch on the wall. The bulb overhead flashed bright enough to burn the shape of the stairwell into my vision, then died instantly, plunging everything back into dim gray. From upstairs, the woman's voice again, closer now. Help! Please! I took a step onto the first stair and something grunted behind me, and not human, not a cough, not a throat clear, a wet, thick sound. I turned my head slowly toward the office. The thing was standing in there, hulking, too tall for the doorway, shoulders hunched like it had to fold itself into the room. The yellow-red eyes hovered near the top of the frame, glowing steady like a pair of tiny furnaces. I couldn't see details, but I could see the outline was wrong. The arms hung too long. The neck didn't match the head. It was a shape pretending to be a shape. A hiss came from it, long and continuous, and the air shimmered. Then the smell hit me. Rotten eggs. Sharp, sulfuric, immediate. My nose burned. My eyes watered. The thing moved. It didn't walk. It rushed fast enough that the office desk exploded backward, the computer sliding off in a screech, papers flying like startled birds. I didn't think. I slammed the stairwell door behind me and ran up. The impact hit the door a second later, hard enough to shake the frame, but it didn't break through. At the top of the stairs was a small apartment coated in dust and silence. Old furniture slumped under sheets. A kitchen with a dead fridge. A living room with a couch that looked like it had been sweating for decades. The rotten egg smell was stronger up here. The hissing was everywhere. My phone shook in my hand as I dialed 911. "I'm at Marlow's Fuel on County 9, I whispered, staring down the dark stairwell door. "There's someone in here." I heard a woman screaming upstairs, and there's gas. I think there's a gas leak. The operator told me to stay on the line. I moved deeper into the apartment, following the voice. There was a short hall with 2 bedroom doors. One was open, empty except for boxes labeled in black marker. The other door was closed. The smell poured from the crack beneath it. The hissing was loudest there. I didn't want to touch the knob. Every instinct in me screamed not to. Then the woman's voice, right behind the door, weak and pleading. "Help! Please!" I grabbed the knob and yanked it open. The room was dim, lit only by a smear of moonlight through a filthy window. A bed sat against the far wall, and in it, an elderly couple lay side by side in old sleepwear. They weren't asleep. Their skin was bloated, discolored, waxy. Their lips were dark and slightly parted. Something crawled from the woman's nostril. An insect, slow and shameless. I stumbled back, choking on the smell. That's when it clicked. The sulfur, the hiss, gas, not a hallucination, not imagination, a natural gas leak. This apartment was filling with it. I turned to run. The corpses sat up. At the same time, their eyes opened, and they weren't cloudy like dead eyes should be. They glowed. Yellow-red, coal-bright. I screamed, and their hands snapped out. Cold, swollen fingers gripping my shirt, my throat, my arms. They leaned in close, their breath not breath at all, just the hissing sound. And they whispered into my ears, together in one voice, "Bring them inside." The dead couple's mouths didn't move much when they spoke, but I felt the words anyway, like they were being pressed into my skull from the inside. "Bring them inside." Their fingers tightened, cold, swollen hands like damp clay. I tried to wrench away, but their grip wasn't human strong. It was anchored, like the room itself was holding me in place. My phone was still connected to the operator. I could hear her voice, tinny and panicked, through the speaker. Sir, are you there? Are you safe?" I couldn't answer. My throat wouldn't work. The hissing filled my ears until it was louder than my own thoughts. The dead man leaned closer, his face inches from mine. His eyes flared brighter, and the rotten egg smell punched so hard I gagged. "Bring them inside," they repeated, both of them, a single voice coming from 2 ruined mouths. Then their hands released me all at once. I stumbled backward, fell against the dresser, and nearly dropped the phone. My lungs burned. Every breath tasted like metal and pennies and something sweet rotten underneath. I backed out of the bedroom, slammed the door without meaning to, and stood there trembling in the hallway. The operator's voice came through again, calmer now, practiced. "Officers are en route. Fire department too. If you smell gas, you need to evacuate immediately." My voice cracked. "There are bodies up here." A pause. The kind of pause that changes everything. "Sir, what do you mean by bodies?" Before I could answer, the stairwell door below thumped. Not once. Twice! Then the whole frame rattled like something heavy had hit it with a shoulder. The hissing rose again, and for a second I was sure the thing in the office was climbing the stairs, forcing its way up, joint by joint. I backed into the living room, keeping my eyes on that door like it might sprout hands. Then I heard it. Not the hiss, not the gas. A sound from downstairs that didn't belong in any normal building. Bells! The front door bells. Someone had just come in. I froze. The stairwell door below went quiet, like the thing had stopped moving to listen. Then I heard a familiar voice drift up from the store, muffled through floorboards. "Hello?" a woman called. "Wade?" My stomach dropped. I knew that voice. I'd heard it in town, at the diner, at the grocery store. Marla. Wade's wife.
Hi, Dad.
I didn't know why she was here in the middle of the night, but the dead couple's whisper crawled back into my head. "Bring them inside." No, 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 no. I rushed to the one filthy window in the living room and looked down. A car sat crooked near the pumps with its headlights still on. Another vehicle had pulled in behind it, an older sedan, likely a patrol car, angled half on the gravel, half on the cracked pavement. The police were here too fast. I barely had time to process that when the store door opened again and the bells jangled a second time. Another voice. A man's. "Ma'am, you can't go back there!" Marla snapped back, sharp and angry. "That's my building. My husband is..." And then Wade's voice, closer to the hallway like he'd just arrived. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded. Relief punched through me so hard my knees went weak. He was here. He could fix this. He could explain the upstairs, the lock, the screams. I ran down the apartment hall toward the stairwell, phone still in my hand. "Wade," I shouted. My voice sounded wrong in that space, thin, swallowed by dust. Downstairs, there was a sudden pause. Then I heard him answer, confused. "Evan." I grabbed the stairwell door handle. For 1 second, I hesitated. Wade's warning came back to me in perfect clarity. "Not even if you hear something," the dead couple's whisper returned, urgent now. "Bring them inside." My fingers tightened around the knob anyway, and I pulled. The door swung open. The stairs were dark, lit only by pale spill from the store's fluorescent lights below. The air rushing up the stairwell was warmer, thick with that sour sulfur smell. I started down. Halfway down, I saw movement in the hallway below. 2 police officers stood near the register, hands near their belts, scanning the aisles. Their faces were tight, cautious. Marla stood with them, arms crossed, furious and pale. Her hair was pulled back in a neat knot, but it was coming loose at the edges like she'd thrown herself together in a hurry. And Wade. Wade stood closer to the back hallway near the office door, staring upward toward me. His face wasn't angry. It was afraid. "Get out of there," he called up, voice strained. "Evan, get back down here right now." I opened my mouth to explain, to tell him about the bodies, about the gas smell, about the thing with the eyes. But before I could speak, Marla shoved past one of the officers and marched into the hallway, heels clicking on the tile. "I'm going upstairs," she said. "I'm not letting some kid destroy my property because he got spooked by a noise." Wade grabbed her arm. "No!" She yanked away. "Don't touch me!" His voice dropped lower. "Marla, please." That was the first time I'd ever heard Wade Marlow beg. The officer stepped between them. "Ma'am," one said, "we need you to stay." She snapped her head toward him. "Stay where? In my own store? My husband's been calling me for weeks saying the kid's unreliable, and now look." Wade's eyes flicked to me again. And in that moment, I saw it. Something in his eyes that didn't match the rest of him. Not fear, not anger. Something like resignation, like he'd been waiting for this to happen. The stairwell light flickered once, just a blink. The kind of flicker you ignore, except the shadow in the hallway didn't flicker the same way. For a split second, the back office doorway looked deeper than it should have. Like the room inside had no walls, just darkness folding inward. And then the rotten egg smell surged so hard it made me cough. One of the officers turned his head. "You smell that?" Marla wrinkled her nose. "It's an old building." "No," the officer said. "Now serious! That's gas!" Wade's face went stiff. The other officer reached for his radio. And then Marla, still stubborn, still furious, stepped toward the office like she owned it, like nothing in that building could tell her no. She reached the doorway and looked inside. For half a second, she didn't move. Then she whispered, almost too quiet to hear. "Wade?" Wade took one step forward. "Marla, back up." She didn't. She tilted her head like she was listening to someone inside the office, and then she stepped in. Both officers moved at once. "Ma'am, stop!" Wade lunged, but he was too late. Marla disappeared into the office darkness like it swallowed her. And the hallway got colder. Not temperature cold, wrong cold. The lights above the hallway dimmed, then flared bright, then dimmed again. From inside the office came a wet scrape, like wood dragged across tile. Then a sound like breathing, but not breathing. That same hiss, long and steady. One officer drew his weapon. The other kept his hand on his radio, backing away without taking his eyes off the office doorway. "Sir!" the armed officer barked at Wade. "Who's in there?" And Wade didn't answer. He was staring at the doorway like he expected something to come out. And then Marla stumbled back into the hall. Her face was shredded. Not clean cuts, ragged, angry gashes across her cheeks, her neck, her hands, as if something with dull nails had raked her again and again. Blood glistened black under the fluorescent lights. Her eyes were wide, unfocused, and her mouth opened like she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. "Help!" she rasped. The armed officer stepped toward her. "Ma'am, get behind us." Then Wade came out of the office, and for one breath, I didn't recognize him. His shoulders were hunched forward like he was carrying something heavy on his back. His head tilted slightly, the way Marla had tilted hers a second earlier. His eyes glowed faintly yellow-red, like coals behind glass. In his hand was a jagged shard of something reflective. Glass. I knew immediately where it came from, that framed photo in the office, the one with his parents on the porch rocking chairs. The officer raised his weapon higher. "Drop it, now!" Wade didn't blink. He moved fast. He grabbed Marla's hair from behind, yanked her head back, and with one smooth motion dragged the shard across her throat. The sound was small, a wet whisper, then blood came out in a violent sheet, splattering the floor, the officer's boots, the bottom edge of the counter display. Marla crumpled like her bones had been removed. Her hands fluttered at her neck, trying to hold something in that couldn't be held. The officer shouted something. I don't remember what. A command, a curse, a prayer. Wade turned toward them, still holding the glass. The other officer finally got his radio up. Shots fired. Wade charged. The gunshots were deafening in the small store. 1, 2, 3! Wade staggered but didn't fall. 4, 5, 6! He dropped to his knees, still facing forward. The glass shard slipped from his hand and clattered across tile. He stayed there a second longer than any living person should have been able to. His glowing eyes fixed on nothing. Then the glow went out, fading like a flame starved of oxygen. Wade collapsed sideways onto the floor beside his wife's body. Silence slammed down. Not peace, just the stunned quiet after something irreversible. Both officers stood shaking, weapons still raised. One of them looked like he was going to throw up. The other backed away as if Wade might rise again. From upstairs, my phone buzzed. Still connected, still alive, the operator faintly saying my name like she'd been calling it for minutes. And then, from deep inside the building, below the buzz of coolers, below the flicker of lights, I heard it. 2 soft creaks, like rocking chairs moving on an old porch. I backed up a step on the stairs, chilled all the way through it, because for the first time since I'd walked in, the rotten egg smell disappeared. The hissing stopped. And the back hallway, where the office door stood open, looked normal again. Too normal. As if whatever had been there had finished what it came to do. The cops ushered me outside. They put me in the back of a cruiser and asked questions through the open door while paramedics tried and failed to save Marla. They searched the apartment upstairs and they found the bodies and 2 elderly corpses in the bed, bloated and discolored, like they'd been there far longer than anyone wanted to admit. But here's what still sticks in my mind, even now. The fire department checked for a gas leak. They found nothing. No leak, no broken line, no pilot light out, no measurable buildup. Nothing that should have produced that smell. Nothing that explained the hissing. Nothing that explained the things I'd seen. The official report said tragedy, domestic violence, psychological stress, hallucination due to exhaustion. But I know what I heard, I know what I smelled, and I know what I felt when those dead hands grabbed me and whispered in my ears. Later, weeks later, when I couldn't sleep and my father was gone and the house felt too quiet, I realized the worst part wasn't the violence, it was the certainty. Those things upstairs didn't ask me to help. They didn't plead, they didn't bargain, they simply told me what was going to happen. Bring them inside, like the ending had already been written. Like the building had been waiting years to finish its story. And I just happened to be the one standing close enough to open the door.